Alright everyone, it's time for a new save. And where exactly are we headed to?
Scotland!
We're headed to Hearts, to be more precise.
Let me take you on a journey. Actually, let me take you on a number of journeys.
Heart of Midlothian FC, commonly known as Hearts, are a professional football club competing in the Scottish Premiership. Formed in 1874, they are the oldest and most successful football club in the Scottish capital. As of August 2021, they are the largest fan-owned club in the UK. They've won the Scottish League Championship 4 times in total, but the last time they did it was 1959 for 60. Outside of that long drought, it doesn't help that the entirety of Scottish football has been dominated by 2 clubs, Celtic and Rangers. After last season, the club is in a good place to where maybe with some time and effort, maybe we can finally unseat the old firm and be the first Scottish team to win a premiership since Aberdeen did it, almost 40 years ago.
I see you're all gluttons for punishment.
Our roster going into the 2022-23 season is led by 39-year-old goalkeeper Craig Gordon, who started his career here at Hearts before Sunderland nearly ruined everything during his prime. He's basically Scotland's best keeper in the modern age, and we're pretty lucky to have him. But one of the other intriguing things that drew me to Hearts is that they seem to have embraced a bit of an Australian connection in recent years by bringing in players like Kai Rouse, Nathaniel Atkinson, and Cameron Devlin.
We're about to reach a breakthrough with the Aussies.
We do bolster the team a little bit more by bringing in Wrexham's Jordan Davies to help with depth in the midfield. We eventually convinced Arsenal to let us take Ryan Porteous on loan, and then we also shipped Gary McKay-Steven back to the MLS before getting our expectations to start the year. Our start to the season against Ross County is not exactly the best, as we draw 0-0, but no time to dwell on missed chances, as our second game of the season is against Hibernian, or Hibs for short. They are a part of the Edinburgh Derby, which is a fierce rivalry between Hearts and Hibs that dates back to the clubs being founded in the mid-1870s. Granted, it has been a bit more one-sided in recent years, as Hibs' last win against Hearts in this derby goes as far back as 2019. You add to the fact that we got Ryan Porteous, who is a former Hibs player, and stuff might just get a little more personal. But we do take care of business. We beat Hibs 2-0. Porteous finally understands what it's like to be on the winning end of this derby, and it's a good first win for the start of the year. We then add on to the momentum by managing to defeat St. Mirren in the Scottish League Cup. Then we somehow managed to get a draw against Celtic thanks to a Liam Bryce goal late in the second half, all in between our Europa League playoff qualifiers. Speaking of which, we ended up getting AEK Larnakas from Cyprus in those qualifiers. The first leg didn't go so well, but look, it's fine. We took care of business in the second leg at home, and would you look at that, we are qualified for the group stages of the Europa League outright. After a St. Johnstone win and a Dundee United draw to end August, we head into September, and with it, we get our Europa League group, and it's doable. A bit unexpected, but I'll take some luck in the draw for once. From there, we do some loan business for Rangers' Scott Wright and Dortmund's Jamie Bino Giddens before the transfer window closes. September sees us go on a pretty nifty run, winning Premiership and Europa League games alike, outside of one black mark that we take against Dinamo Zagreb in their stadium. But our most important win of the month does come in an extra time affair in the Scottish League Cup against defending champion Celtic. And it is none other than Liam Boyce who comes to our rescue, scoring a brace in the dying minutes of the game and then scoring in extra time to punch our ticket into the semifinals of the League Cup. But then October came along and it presented some challenges. Seriously lads, I get losing to Rangers, but losing to Kilmarnock in Ross County?
Gonna no do that. Oh, just gonna no.
With the World Cup to be played, the schedule for November was short, and thankfully, the team got it together and produced some results, including going to the top of the table in the Europa after a win against Austrian, rescuing a draw against Motherwell, not letting Rangers beat us for once, and a 4-goal night for Lawrence Shankland against Livingstone. We also qualified for the round of 16 in the Europa League, so we've got that going for us.
4 to 6 weeks later.
We come back from the World Cup break, back in form, winning 4 straight in December, and Liam Boyce is a big reason for that, walking into January with 22 goals across all competitions. This is good considering that we do need to make a push for 3rd place in the Premiership in order to guarantee Europa League football next year at minimum. We went into the 3rd Edinburgh Derby of the year, where Liam Boyce's brace helped us secure a 4-1 win. Which is comforting, given that we found out hours earlier that we were getting Celtic in the 4th round of the Scottish Cup, which, by the way, is the 2nd oldest competition in association football history. It's at this time that we realize that we need reinforcements. Much like the real-life version of Hearts has done, we proceed to bring in Newcastle's Geraint Kuhl on loan, then make a deal to get Callum Patterson out of Sheffield Wednesday and Yutaro Oda from Vissel Kobe on board. In the League Cup, we take care of business against Cove Rangers to punch our ticket to the finals with a 3-1 win. And we know soon after that it will be Motherwell that will be facing in the final.
Impressive. Very nice.
A win against Aberdeen in the Premiership follows suit, and then our big Scottish Cup match against Celtic, who have won this competition 40 times total. The game itself is a cagey affair until Craig Hackett picks up a loose deflection in the box after a throw-in and sends it into the net at the 113th minute mark to give us the victory, knocking out one half of the old firm from the competition and giving us a legitimate shot at heading back to the finals once again. Not long after that, we secured the loan rights to Norwegian midfielder Odin Thiago Holm, and right on time as the Scottish League Cup final is on deck against Motherwell. It's a well-fought battle, but it's the loanee himself who just arrived the day prior to the fixture who strikes true from outside of the box and gets one onto the net as Odin gets us the 1-0 lead, and it is more than enough to give Hearts its first trophy in a decade. While we do follow that epic win by laying a goose egg against Livingstone in the Premiership, we set our focus into finalizing our transfer window as Robert Snodgrass and Benny Baningme leave on transfers and Nathaniel Atkinson goes out on loan for the rest of the season. But this does give us enough in the books to make a move for Uruguayan midfielder Fabrizio Diaz for $1.5 million, along with grabbing Bruce Anderson for depth at the striker position. We kick off February with another draw against Rangers, then a win against Dundee United. But the day before our 5th round match in the Scottish Cup against Gala FR, it doesn't help the fact that he's had a similar injury to this on another knee during his time in England with Burton Albion. But for now, he will be in rehab, and hopefully we can see him make a comeback sometime next year. We've got to keep it moving, so we go for February as a win against Gala FR, and the Scottish Cup pushes us further into the rounds where we'll get Falkirk in the quarterfinals. The wins do continue to come for the remainder of the month against Motherwell, and we managed to catch Celtic off guard by going with a 4-3-3 gegenpress formation and end up winning 3-1 against them. But perhaps we should have saved these surprise formations for the Europa League.
Sometimes it may be good, sometimes it may be
The Europa League merchants themselves. Damn it, man, was Real Betis or Leverkusen unavailable? Even a win against St. Johnstone isn't enough to carry any momentum going into that first leg, where Sevilla proceeds to treat us in the same way that a very sweet dog treats a new toy. We go back home, we lick our wounds, we take some frustrations out on Falkirk in the Scottish Cup to move on to the semis, but then we've got to face the music. A second leg at home, being down 2 goals against the most successful team in this entire competition. It's a recipe for disaster. That gets completely turned on its head when Karim Rekic makes the dumbest sliding tackle known to man on Kuhl outside of the box and gets a straight red card for it.
Get him off the field!
We've got a lifeline here, and that's all the motivation the boys need, as Garankuo gets his hat-trick by the early part of the second half. Barry McKay and Bruce Anderson add to his scoring, and we walk away with a 5-0 win in a 6-3 aggregate win over Sevilla.
My dog!
Even with Lazio announced as our quarterfinal opponents, that challenge is just all that much more inviting now that we know that we can hang. Although it would be nice to follow up big wins in trophy or continental competitions with another win, as Aberdeen proceeds to burst our bubble by beating us 2-1 before the international break. We have a busy April ahead of us between the Europa League quarterfinals, the Scottish Cup semi-final, and some Premiership matches. We managed to win those Premiership bouts, including a third encounter against Hibs, but the first leg against Lazio at home, Ciro Immobile does Ciro Immobile things after a rare error from Porteous. They hold on, it's a 1-0 loss. But we are undeterred, and we go into the Scottish Cup semi-final against Livingston with that mentality. They make this one tougher than usual. We do go to extra time, but Alan Forrest buries a penalty in order to punch our ticket into the Scottish Cup final. And would you look at that, it's a rematch of last year's final against Rangers too. But going back to the Europa League, we do go into the second leg. The effort is there. We fight it out to a 2-2 draw, but we just cannot get that third goal to tie the aggregate. So the unlikeliest of runs is finally over for us, but I do believe it's a run that's going to make us stronger in the long term. For now, we need to focus on the final games of the Premiership and the Scottish Cup final. After 33 games, the Scottish Premiership splits into two groups, the Championship group and the Relegation group. As a part of the Championship group, we are fighting to maintain our spot in third place and get Europa League football, not to mention trying to give Celtic and Rangers a bit of a scare for the top two spots. So of course, that's when Celtic finally decides to give one over on us this year. But not to worry, we do seal a pair of wins against Aberdeen and Ross County to secure our third place spot for good, and with it, we arrive at the final of the Scottish Cup. Last season, Rangers beat us 2-0 to win the cup. We're hoping our fate is a little bit different this roundabout. However, a few days prior to the game, we do get some news. Liam Boyce has announced his retirement just a few days before the final.
Hell no!
So, the mission for us now is pretty simple. We're winning it for Liam, lads. And we're catching Rangers by surprise in the process with a brand new 4-3-1-2 formation. As the final begins, the new formation immediately begins to pay dividends as we draw a penalty in the very first minute of the match. It is saved by the Rangers keeper, but we keep it moving, as the opportunities do continue to come, and in the 22nd minute, it is none other than one of our January signings in Fabrizio Diaz who finds the back of the net after an incredible effort from Odin Thiago Holm and Toby Simic. Rangers almost end up getting an equalizer in the 65th minute, but Alex Cochran blocks the shot from going in at the goal line. From there, we keep Rangers at bay, and with it, lads, we've done it. We've done it for Liam. Heart of Midlothian FC have won the Scottish Cup for the first time in a decade. Double Cup winners is a fantastic means to wrap up the season. As for the Premiership, we end in third place. Celtic wins another title. Rangers come in second. A solid first year overall with the double, but we are still a ways away from taking down the old firm on the Premiership side. So we've got a bit more work to do. We've got some building blocks in place, and I have some ideas on how to move forward. After our first season with Hearts, we're in a pretty good place to pick up from where we left off after a pair of cup wins and an Europa League performance that took us to the quarterfinals. That said,
Well, time to go to work.
First, we extend Cameron Devlin's contract with a new release clause. Then, we make loans for Odin Thiago Holm and Ryan Porteous into permanent contracts. We follow that by making some other moves, such as picking up Dujon Sterling from Chelsea and a free transfer, Vasilija Milanovic from Australia, Yassine Salmani from Iran, and Sufanat Moyanta from Thailand. However, we also have players who leave, so Lawrence Shankland, Peter Herring, and Zender Clark are among the ones who go. So, how do we start our season opener against Aberdeen? Well, if you guessed it's another season opener draw, congratulations. You are a clairvoyant and I'd like to use your talents in the near future. At least it's similar to last year where the rest of August, we win our next few games, including a 6-0 thrashing of Vorskla in the Europa League playoff qualifier, where Garancourt scores all 6 of said goals in the first leg. It's such a large gap that even a close 3-2 loss in the second leg is not enough for them to overturn the aggregate. So, hooray for getting back into the Europa League. We then get our Europa group draw, and it sees us against Olympiacos, Maccabi Haifa, and Bayer Leverkusen.
Flashback.
The Europa League merchants themselves. Damn it, man, was Real Betis or Leverkusen unavailable?
End of flashback.
Well, this is awkward. A pair of 4-1 wins in the Premiership soon follow in September to start, leading us into the Europa League matchup against Leverkusen, and they are who we thought they were as we smash them 3-0. Rave soon follows on the path of destruction we've begun to build, and in the Scottish League Cup quarterfinals, even a supposed tough matchup against Rangers is made into a walk in the park as we go into the Ibrox and bash them 4-0. So of course they throw us Celtic in the semi-final.
The thing next to you is a pain in the ass.
But it's alright, we'll take out our annoyances of those events on St. Mirren to end September undefeated. We walk into October to beat Olympiacos in the Europa, beat Dundee United in the Premiership, and then we lay a goose egg against Ross County, thus snapping our undefeated streak. It's not looking good when we struggle after that to make the best of our chances against Maccabi Haifa in the Europa League and can't even beat a Celtic team that's down a man to wrap up the month in the Premiership. But we move to November, it's a new month, we don't start it off well with a draw to Rangers, but thankfully our favorite punching bags are next on the schedule. Yes, I am talking about Hibernian and the Edinburgh derbies that we have this year.
2 hours later.
We scored 3 goals in the first half, and those are more than enough to seal the deal to get us back to our winning ways. So thanks, Hibs. Thanks a lot. A Scottish League Cup semi-final matchup against Celtic goes the distance again, and we do come out victorious against the boys, with 2 of our Australians being the ones to make the goal scoring happen. We advanced to the Scottish League Cup final for the 2nd straight year, and this time around, we've got Ross County waiting for us on the other side. The rest of November has no losses in the book. Premiership-wise, we're keeping up appearances by being 3rd place, but if we're going to shake up the old firm, we need to start showing those 2 franchises that we're not here to mess around before the end of the year. So beating up on Rife in the most dominant way possible with a 9-0 victory sends that message pretty clearly. A thriller against Leverkusen in the Europa doesn't deter us as we still manage to qualify to the knockout stage of the competition.
Success!
We then use that loss as further fuel to the fire to win 4 straight in the Premiership, including yet another derby win against Hibs. Oh, right, this also applies to the Scottish League Cup final against Ross County, where Yasin Salmani's first ever goal with Hearts is an absolute screamer that finds the back of the net. It helps to give us our first trophy of the season. 1 title defense down, 1 to go. January is here and it means transfer business, and we don't hesitate to make some deals to strengthen our roster for the big games ahead, especially since we get our knockout round draw in the Europa against Serbian side Red Star Belgrade. We see Garancourt depart back to Newcastle as his loan expires.
So long, partner.
But bring in Leeds United's Wilfried Gnonto on loan for the rest of the season to replace him. We then add in Marek Rodak from Fulham as a backup keeper and get a sweet deal on a versatile defender in Anderson Arroyo from Liverpool. As per our fixtures during the month, Celtic beat us again.
Kiss my sweaty balls, you fat f***.
Thankfully, we cleared out the rest of the month smoothly with wins all over the board, including a 5-1 win in the 4th round of the Scottish Cup against Berwick. We also complete a 1-year extension with Craig Gorton, guaranteeing that the man will retire as a champion.
It's a real good atmosphere both on and off the pitch, and we need to try and keep that together. We'll definitely need them at this point.
February sees us start off strong against Dundee United in Kilmarnock before yet again running into Celtic. We at least draw them this time in a boring 0-0 affair. But the show goes on as we move through the rest of February in undefeated fashion, including wins in the Scottish Cup 5th round against Forfar, getting the announcement that we face Hibs in the next round, which is hilarious, and then an aggregate win of 5-0 against Red Star Belgrade in the Europa Knockout 2 legs. We are in March, and we're once again in the round of 16 of the Europa League.
Oh, no, not these guys again!
Until that time comes, we do have Premiership business to take care of, and 2 wins in a draw to start the month is not bad by any stretch. We get Sevilla at home for the first leg this time, and while the Europa League merchants make it tough for us, Sufanat Mwanta scores, Craig Gordon saves an RDT penalty, and we go to the second leg with the slim advantage. The schedule makers do have an odd sense of humor putting the Scottish Cup matchup versus Hibs in between those Europa League legs. However, lads, it's Hibs. We rotate the lineup, we managed to win 1-0, we move to the semis of the Scottish Cup against Motherwell, and is it really a rivalry if you just keep beating them over and over again?
Questions for later.
We have the second leg of the Europa League, where the good news for Sevilla is that Raul de Thomas does score on a penalty kick this time, 15 minutes after Hart scores the second goal of the aggregate. So yes, the Europa League merchants have been dealt with again.
24 hours later.
The draw in the Europa League gives us Leverkusen.
Surprise, bitch. I bet you thought you'd seen the last of me.
Let's keep going, because we do end up finishing March by giving Motherwell a small preview of what might just happen to them in the Scottish Cup semi-final next month. During the course of these last few months, our run of form in the Premiership, along with Rangers becoming draw merchants, has put us comfortably in second place while they're having to fend off Hibs to maintain third place. With the Premiership split only a few weeks away, we've actually got a shot at second place, and with it, the League Path qualifiers of the Champions League. So we just keep doing what we've been doing. We beat Wraith and Hibs again in the Premiership matches, even as some of our players like Craig Hackett, Jordan Davies, and Ryan Porteous keep taking themselves out in practice for prolonged periods of time. It's not necessarily ideal given we have Leverkusen on the schedule, and it does show in the first leg of the quarterfinals as we go into their house and surrender a 1-0 lead late to their super sub Paulinho. Not to worry though, we do prove yet again that Bayern Leverkusen are who we thought they were all along by beating them in the second leg 3-0, thanks to Yutaro Oda and Sufanat Mwanta supplying the goal scorer. Wrapping up the month, we round back around to Motherwell and beat them 7-0 in the Scottish Cup semi-finals, punching our ticket to our second straight cup final here against Dundee United. It's new territory for us on a lot of fronts, what with the defending multiple cups and then coming as far as we have in the Europa League itself, which we've reached now the semi-finals for the first time ever. Go figure that they decided for a Premier League team like West Ham United to rudely welcome us for making it so far in the Europa. The Premiership split does happen at the end of April, but before our game against Aberdeen, we do get the news in which Craig Gordon will be calling it a career at the end of the season. That announcement does inspire a 3-1 win against Aberdeen, and we are only 5 points behind Celtic in second place, but it's not good enough to hang with Celtic after losing to them and to Rangers, thus guaranteeing Celtic yet another title. But you know what? Let's focus on Europa. In the first leg against West Ham, where it looks like we're gonna escape London with a draw to head back to Tynecastle Park, but then...
Do not scratch your eyes! You are really seeing the most extraordinary...
Gonna no do that. Oh, just gonna no.
Also, it doesn't help that Yassin Salmani and Anderson Arroyo both get injured and are out for the rest of the season. Not ideal, by any stretch. I hate it here.
Oh.
We do feel some of those absences as the second leg of the semis. West Ham is up 2-0 on us, but on the brink of elimination, Dujon Sterling decides to deliver the goal of the season from outside of the box. And when a right back is the one doing that, well, the rest of the team gets the man ones. Nonto and Moyanta deliver on goal soon after. We go to extra time. It takes until the second half of extra time, but Nathaniel Atkinson and Bruce Anderson deliver for us, and in unbelievable fashion, we are moving on to the finals of the Europa. Wait. Paris Saint-Germain?
Of course!
What the f are you doing here? Are you not supposed to be bottling it up in the Champions League?
God damn it!
Okay, 2 games left in the season. First, we got the Scottish Cup final to deal with, but in the 97th minute, Wilfried Gnonto comes through in the clutch, scoring a goal, and that's more than enough to guarantee us our second straight Scottish Cup and yet another double for the year. But on to the important business now. The Europa League final is upon us, against the one team in France that has monopolized their entire league. We may be the underdogs, we may not be given a chance, but come hell or high water, we are at least scoring a goal on these Farmers League merchants. And Yutaro Oda soon delivers just that on the counter, taking a pass from Odin Thiago home, sprinting past 2 PSG defenders, finding the corner of the net on his shot. 15 minutes in, and we are leading 1-0 against France's absolute best. But then, this happens. Okay, not exactly ideal that Kylian Mbappe tied this in 5 minutes, but still 1-1. It's anybody's game, and we could...
Yes, sir.
Well, this escalated quickly.
A few minutes later.
Bolsonarista filho da... Not ideal to end the season on a loss, but we did get to the final of an Europa League against a powerhouse team, and it's something to still be very proud of as a whole. But for now, we veer away from Europa as our focus for this next year is pretty simple. Champions League path football qualifiers to start getting the money to flow in order to finally start giving Celtic the scare that they deserve. With the season all wrapped up, we do say goodbye to a club legend in Craig Gordon. He was a faithful servant to the club, to the game, and to Scotland as a whole. But you know the rules around here. When legends retire, they become coaches. Speaking of which, we have this goalkeeping coach position open, then yeah, get in, just take it. Let's go already. 2 seasons into the Scottish Premiership, and we have been able to establish ourselves as a team that can compete for the title, and an Europa League run that saw us make it to the final before Paris Saint-Germain ruined everything.
Yes, sir.
It's a busy off-season for us, as we bring in players for the future like Trent Lenigan, Yu Oikawa, Tomas Portillo, and Leonardo Campagna on transfers. Then squeeze in Yukinari Sugawara to actually play on the right side for squad depth. We also see Orestes leave for Belgium, and then Wolverhampton Wanderers meet the release clause on Cameron Devlin's contract.
Oh, I can't believe you've done this.
We do dive into the loan market for a pair of wonder kids in Archie Gray from Leeds United and striker Emre Tezgel from Stoke City. Tezgel is actually a pretty big get for us, as the Englishman of Turkish descent has shown his potential in outings with England's U21 side and has been compared to Harry Kane as a result of his stocky frame and superb finishing skills. Let's just hope he hasn't inherited his penalty kick woes and lack of ability in clutch situations when it matters most.
He's the choke artist!
We also need a starting goalie after Craig Gordon's retirement, which leads us to grabbing Nathan Baxter from Millwall at 3.7 million and have a deal in place to bring in Nathaniel Nwosu from Nigeria into the fold as a backup. Look, it's a new year, a new start to the Premiership, but in typical Hearts fashion, we draw on the opening game of the season.
This is beginning to become a habit.
Alas, this season, we find ourselves in the league path qualification for the Champions League instead of the Europa. We do enter those qualifiers in the third round against Rosenborg BK from Norway, and we deal with them swiftly, beating them 2-0 on both legs before moving on to the playoff round against FC Porto. After a quick pit stop in the Scottish League Cup against St Johnstone, we have the 2 legs against Porto. We take care of business against the Portuguese side in Tynecastle Park with a 3-0 win that sees Yutaro Oda score a brace, and at Stadio do Dragão, a 3-2 win by Porto is not enough to overturn the aggregate as we punch our ticket right into... right. This is the year in which they switch it from the regular format to the 36-team nonsense. Playing AC Milan and Manchester United is gonna suck, but overall, I think we can get some results here. We roll through the end of August and through September unbeaten, be it on the Premiership side, beating Hibs in the quarterfinal of the Scottish League Cup 3-0, and a draw against Nice in the Champions League, which isn't nice by any stretch, but a little more doable when October sees us run through FC Midtjylland and Dinamo Zagreb in the Champions League group stage, and with some solid wins in the Premiership before we draw against Rangers and Celtic within a 3-day span. Yutaro Oda's form has been great this year with 9 assists to his name, so of course he gets a groin strain that takes him out for a month. November comes along, and with it, Hibs actually put up a fight for the first time in almost 3 years by drawing us 1-1, but they still can't win, so that bit keeps going. Benfica suffers an even worse fate than Porto, as the Portuguese side is beaten 5-1 to put ourselves in a more comfortable spot for qualifying to the next round of the Champions League. Ayr and Dundee United get dealt with in Premiership and Scottish League Cup games respectively, and then our biggest game since PSG as AC Milan comes to Scotland for the Champions League.
2 hours later.
It's a boring 0-0 affair. We did make a lot of money out of this one though. It's enough to convince the board to invest in our youth recruitment and in expanding Tynecastle Park.
Pretty neat.
December is an incredible month altogether, as we do pull through with wins in all 6 of our Premiership games, including outings against Rangers and Hibs. In the Champions League, a tough game at Villa Park sees us overcome the Premier League side with a 3-2 win. But the pièce de résistance of this month is the Scottish League Cup final against Celtic. And Yutaro Oda's solo goal in the 10-minute mark, along with a stout defense, is enough to come out victorious and claim our first trophy of the season. We go into the new year.
Man!
Alas, the new year brings more games, as we do take down Livingston and Celtic, but do experience our first straight-up defeat in the Premiership against Aberdeen, before then falling to Manchester United in the Champions League. But the team bounces back with strong wins against Kilmarnock in the 4th round of the Scottish Cup and a come-from-behind win against Feyenoord to wrap up January. The Feyenoord game does guarantee us a qualification to the next round of the Champions League.
Success!
And a new year also means looking at your options to improve the team for the games to come. That means one thing.
Loans. 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 Oh, loans. You gotta have loans.
Calvin Ramsey, Lucero Gertruida, and Japet Tanganga are brought in via loans. Kai Rouse goes on loan to Derby County, and Andy Halliday is out of contract, so he just straight up leaves. During that time, we also do sign free agent James Rodriguez, who is set to retire next year. We move along to February, where after a win against St. Mirren, we get the draw for our Champions League knockout stage match, and we get Chelsea. Ouch. However, the month itself continues to see us maintain first place with 4 wins and a pair of draws against Dundee United and of course Rangers. We do get Emery Tesco back in time for our Scottish Cup 5th round match against Dundee FC, in which he scores within minutes of it and we win comfortably. But the main event for this month is the 2 legs of the Champions League knockout against Chelsea. The first leg is a boring affair with a 0-0 draw, but given that it happened at Stamford Bridge, that's a win for us as we get to go into Tynecastle Park for the second leg. Doesn't start well with Mason Mount getting a goal for the Blues, but Yu Oikawa does get us even before the end of the first half. From there, this goes into extra time where Wesley Fofana ends up getting a red card.
Get him off the field! That was diabolical!
But we are unable to capitalize. So, we go to penalty kicks. Jorginho, who is still with Chelsea in this save, does start us off here, but his PK gets saved by Nathan Baxter.
What a save!
James Rodriguez, Mateo Kovacic, Ryan Porteous, Cesare Cazadei, and Dujon Sterling all convert, making it 3-2 to Hearts as Ben Chilwell steps up next for Chelsea, and the former Chelsea goalie makes the save again. It's now up to Fabricio Diaz to do his part, and he knocks it home. Hearts are now round of 16 bound in the Champions League. The round of 16 draw comes shortly after that, and we get Fiorentina, which is a lot better than some of the other choices on the table. We continue this incredible run even further as Ayr, Kilmarnock, and Livingston are taken down. We draw against Celtic in the Premiership, but then beat them soundly in the Scottish Cup quarter-final.
Kiss my sweaty balls, you fat f***.
And within the Champions League, we do take the aggregate advantage by beating Fiorentina at home 3-1 and then hold out for a draw in Italy during the second leg, meaning that we are advancing to the quarterfinals against another Italian team in Atalanta. Interesting. 31 games in the Premiership at the start of April that we've done, and our win against St. Johnstone keeps us 5 points ahead of second place Rangers. But in the process of the lead up to our first leg quarterfinal against Atalanta, turns out missing your starting left back isn't a good sign of things to come, as Atalanta scores 3 goals in the second half of the first leg, and our odds are basically slim to none in the Champions League.
Ratio L, you fell off.
A draw against Aberdeen.
Ah!
Unit lost.
Oh no!
But thankfully, we do have Hibs to beat up on.
Fight back! Fight back!
This is where the Premiership split takes place, and with it, we find ourselves 9 points ahead of Celtic and Rangers respectively, with only 5 games to go in the Premiership, as the title race is heading to the wire. But first, we have to deal with Atalanta and the second leg of the Champions League quarterfinal. At this point, we have absolutely nothing to lose, so we go all out on attacking.
We ball.
Yutaro Oda opens up the scoring within the first minute. Porteous uses his head on a long distance free kick to get us the second goal, and Emery Tesco capitalizes on a bad pass from the Atalanta defense to tie up the aggregate in the second half. Somehow, someway, this thing is working, and we end up taking this one to extra time, where Luis Guilherme, the loanee from Palmeiras, capitalizes on a Tesco pass to chip it over the goalie, and holy sh**, we are somehow going to the Champions League semifinals in miraculous fashion again. Okay, let's handle some Scottish Cup business first. We do that by taking down Ayr and punching our ticket to the Scottish Cup final for the 3rd straight year.
You've got mail.
Of course, we got an Edinburgh Derby in the final. But will Hibs actually show up for this one? Or will they just be the usual punching bags that they are? We'll find out at the end of the month. Then we have a chance to seal the title of the Premiership against Aberdeen.
Nope.
It's then that we have to face our destiny against Real Madrid, where we get dominated on most aspects of the game, but somehow only manage to lose 2-0, which is more feasible than our situation in the quarterfinal, but it's also against a team that is much better than Atalanta in every aspect. But first, take 2 on this whole league win thing, this time against Rangers.
2 hours later.
Another day, another draw. We'll deal with it in due time. We've got the second leg of the Champions League semi-final to deal with here at Tynecastle Park. We do start that one by scoring early yet again, this time off of a Yassine Salmani shot in the box from a set piece before Ryan Porteous ties the aggregate off on a corner kick header. We're somehow hanging on, and even though Rodrigo does score in the 63rd minute for Real, Emery Tezgel delivers for us in the clutch yet again with a 3rd goal to force this into extra time. But with a team as talented as Real Madrid, we ran out of steam. They score at the tail end of the first half of extra time, and that incredible run we just had in the Champions League sees a bittersweet end to it that gives way to an El Clasico final.
Boring!
But our efforts here are more than encouraging, as our focus can shift solely to the match against Dundee United. A win against the Terrors guarantees us the Scottish Premiership. Our goal to disrupt Scottish League football is much sooner at hand than any of us expected, and we go for broke here, as in the second half, and 4 goals later, we have actually done it. Heart of Midlothian Football Club has its first Scottish Premiership trophy since the 1959-1960 season. Not only do we qualify for the Champions League outright next year, but the absolute scenes that are going to be celebrated in Edinburgh is going to be amazing, especially for a fan-owned club like this one that has been more than deserving of the opportunity to boogie it up accordingly. With the title secured, our focus is on the Scottish Cup final. We've got a double in our hands, but the opportunity to pull off a treble against our heated rivals... No matter how Tub Hibs tries to make it of a game, we seize the opportunity with a pair of goals in the second half, and we seize our 3rd straight Scottish Cup, and the treble is ours. In our 3rd season with Hearts, we've reached the top of the mountain in Scottish football, winning all 3 of the most important competitions in the country, winning trophies in all of them. So the goal for next year is to be able to defend these in every competition. But we also have to consider one more goal: Champions League glory. Sir Alex Ferguson with Aberdeen glory. Whether we do it or not, you'll just have to tune in and find out. After upsetting the balance of Scottish football with Hearts by being the first team in 40 years not named Celtic or Rangers to win a Premiership, I thought that would be good enough for me.
That's not enough.
Turns out, that just made me hungrier to do the same type of thing Sir Alex Ferguson did at Aberdeen, by not only being able to win the league at home, but to win it on a continental scale. Which means... Oh, and it was then that I saw the budget our board gave us for the upcoming year, and...
Anyway, I started blasting. Bang! Bang!
Between making Emre Tezgel and Luis Guilherme's loan stints into permanent deals, we invested in the team's future with signings like Radoslav Sremak from Bayern, Wang Zhi on a free transfer, Kwon Cheng-hoon from Suwon for some veteran depth, and then some future players like these guys. Now, why did I go so crazy in June? It was my way of coping with losing Ryan Porteous, who had his release clause matched by Everton. The money we got from Porteous' sale was promptly spent on bringing replacements like Basir Omeragic from Bayern's second team and Strahinja Irakovic from Liverpool. We also used that money to bring in wingback Jan Matson from Chelsea, and then, after getting a compilation of his goal celebrations by some of the Jambos out there, I did pay Burnley around $7 million to get Dr. Funk, Callum Patterson back in the building. Look man, if we're gonna try and win a Champions League, we need vibes. And you know what brings vibes? Dudes who bust out goal celebrations as if they were in a FIFA game. The odds makers have us at 11-10 odds to repeat as champions. Our season expectations are also in that same range, but our friendlies are not helping as Wangzhou and Odin Thiago home pick up injuries that will rule them out for the opening games of the season. Speaking of which, we're opening the season against Aberdeen for the third year in a row, and just as always, we end up drawing.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
So we'll take that momentum, take down Celtic with a narrow 1-0 win. And that's not good. So with that, Motherwell does give us a near scare in the second round of the Scottish League Cup by taking us to penalties. Nathaniel Nwosu saves 3 pens in a row on his debut with the senior team, and that does the trick to get us to advance. Our form in the Premiership is all well and good by adding some wins against Dundee United and St. Johnstone on the board, but we've got Champions League football fixtures starting in September, and maybe the group stage gods will have mercy on us for once in their life. I would have taken at least one more softball other than FC Lausanne.
Unit lost.
Oh dear God, are you all having a betting pool on who gets injured the fastest again? That was bad enough last year.
Stop it!
It's a good thing that I have the trade deadline to distract me, because there is one particular player who I've been keeping an eye on since the end of last season. Felipe Coutinho. Look, I know he's 33 and Aston Villa's barely used him this year, but I do feel like he can do what James Rodriguez did for us last season, but slightly better. Also, he's Brazilian, so there is a bias here. Let's just run with that. Anyways, we got that transfer done. We even got Brian Reynolds out of Aston Villa as a loan, which is needed because we do lose Yukinari Sugawara to Norwich, and then Nathan Baxter's release clause gets met by Leicester City, so he goes as well. That said, Inter Milan welcomes us to the Champions League in brutal fashion by luring us into a false sense of security before coming from behind with a 3-2 win at the San Siro. At least things are going swimmingly in the Premiership, as we haven't lost at all throughout September and carry a 23-game unbeaten streak dating back to last season. Scottish League Cup-wise, a one-sided victory over Dundee FC sets up a semi-final encounter against Kilmarnock in December. But for now, October sees us involved in more Champions League action, and while a draw against Lille is disappointing, we managed to come from behind to win against Real Sociedad for our first win in the competition. Nothing to worry on the Premiership front though, we win all of our games there for the month, including a landslide 5-1 win against Livingston, and a key win against Rangers after a Emery Tezgel brace. Hibs are next on the list, and oh, who am I kidding? We beat him for the umpteenth time during my stint here. Let's just move on to a game that actually does have some stakes in it. Because Real Madrid is back in town. The semi-final loss from last year's is still fresh in our minds, and Real Madrid sees fit to remind us by pouring more salt in the wound and winning 3-2 in our own pitch. 1 win, 1 draw, 2 losses. We're going to need to be nearly perfect in the second half of the group stage games if we want to place in the knockoff playoff round. We also see the month of November be the one where our winning streak in the Scottish Premiership comes to an end, as Dundee United stops that streak at 29 games after beating us 2-1. The loss does have its positive effects, because we use that as fuel to defeat our good friends at Aston Villa in the Champions League before handling Rangers in their own stadium after that. December comes about and we start on the road by taking out Kilmarnock to get our 4th straight League Cup final, dominate St. Johnstone, then handle FC Lausanne in the Champions League with ease with no goals being surrendered. Oh, don't look at me, I'm not involved in any of that.
Huh?
Oh, right, I should explain.
Flashback.
So a few weeks ago, Moyanta came to my office, upset that he hasn't been starting a lot of games. I explained that he got injured for 4 to 5 weeks earlier this year, and that I've been rotating the lineups to help us avoid injury. He didn't buy it, words were had, and he made it crystal clear that I was impeding him from being great.
End of flashback.
So you know what? Fine. He's getting one of those fancy masks, and I am playing him at any given chance possible.
No one cared who I was till I put on the mask.
We are going to need him though, because the tail end of December is where our Scottish League Cup final match against Celtic is happening. It's a matchup filled with drama, mainly because we let a 3-1 lead slip through our fingers. But extra time can't yield a winner, and thus we go to penalty kicks for the second time during this competition. It's a teeter-totter affair, with all initial 5 players on each side making their kicks, even with some of the goalies coming close to save them, which leads to the nail-biting scenario of sudden death. Arroyo and Brun Larsen nailed their PKs, making it 6-6. Salmani steps up to make it 7-6. But Connor Bradley cannot equalize it as Nathaniel Nwosu makes the save and Hearts have their first trophy of the season in dramatic fashion.
Success!
So after I'm home celebrating this dub, Motherwell's head coach takes the time to call me and the boys overrated, which doesn't sit well with me at all, so we beat the ever-living snot out of that lot, and then do the same to Aberdeen to end the year in that bright, cheerful holiday spirit. We go to January. We start the year by putting pen to paper on signing a Korean young prospect in Kim Hyung-woo, and I decline bids for Moyanta, Tezgel, and Fabrizio Diaz from the big boy European clubs en route to beating up Hibs 5-0, a game that saw Wang Zhu unleash an absolute screamer from outside of the box, and then St. Mirren get dealt with shortly after the fact. But admittedly, in seeing how well Guilherme and Wang Zhu have been doing this year, I opt to take a 31 mil offer from Borussia Dortmund for Moyanta and a 27 mil offer from Real Madrid for Fabrizio Diaz. Games-wise, wins against Ajax in Champions League and Celtic in the Scottish League follow suit. The Scottish Cup game putting us in the 5th round against Scottish Championship side Queen's Park FC. But in one of those dates in the schedule that we've been dreading, that comes along because we have a trip to Anfield to take on a prime Liverpool team that proceeded to smack us around 4-0 by the end of the first half before we managed to get 2 goals out of pity in the second half. I guess the bright side is that we did manage to qualify for the knockout playoff round with the 13 points that we do manage to get. Good timing too, because the winter transfer window is here, and Anderson Arroyo is sold off to Brighton, while we bring in Emil Bohinen from Salernitana to replace Diaz, and Divine Wrench from Ajax on deadline day for added defensive depth. We didn't do a whole lot because we've also been dealing with takeover rumors after Budge declared that she was going to be retiring sooner rather than later. I'm gonna miss her, she was a true pal. As for the Premiership, I'm just going to be flat out honest with you all that the run of form here is impeccable throughout these next 3 months, with Tezgel scoring goals left, right, and center from February all the way until April, and we don't see a single loss during those games. The results are something you can see for yourselves here, but we're going to round back to the competition once the Premiership split comes around at the tail end of April. For now, the Champions League knockoff playoff round matches are announced, and we get Real Sociedad, who we did actually manage to defeat during the group stages, so I do feel confident that we can do it again. First, we handle Queen's Park in the Scottish Cup with relative ease to punch our ticket into the quarterfinal against Aberdeen. The first leg against Real Sociedad is nothing short of an epic at Stadio de Anoeta, as the offenses fire on all cylinders for both teams, and we come out victorious with a 5-3 victory.
Unit lost. Unit lost.
Injuries aside, we managed to get a solid win in the second leg 3-0 and we advance.
Unit lost.
We advance into the round of 16 of the Champions League to face Tottenham Hotspur. They look like their usual selves. What with Harry Kane, Richarlison, and Hugman's son being there. Anyways, we don't have a whole lot of time to rest, as Spurs do come to Scotland in the first leg. And listen, while there are more yellow cards than there were goals in this one, Tottenham do come out of this one with the 1-0 victory off a Marco Asensio goal. It's not ideal to be behind on an aggregate, especially when heading into your opponent's pitch for the second leg, but then it dawned on me during the trip to England.
Say the line, Bart! Lads, it's Tottenham! Yay!
24 hours later.
Emery Tesco gets the memo because unlike Harry Kane, he actually knows what clutch genes look like. As he scores a brace, Yu Oikawa adds a third goal, and we advance to the quarterfinals of the Champions League for the second year straight.
Nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition!
Fun history fact. Everybody expected the Spanish Inquisition. They were legally obliged to give 30 days notice. It's just a bit more of a challenge to stop it when it's either Real Madrid, Barcelona, or one of the Atleticos leading the whole shebang. Especially with Barcelona's roster still being stacked, and they're riding hard for Robert Lewandowski, who is playing his final season of football before he finally retires to become the TikTok star that he was always meant to be. Anyways, Spanish are on schedule, but we've got the Scottish Cup quarterfinal to deal with next. While Aberdeen's defense puts in a good performance, we do eventually break through their defenses to win 1-0 in and go to the semifinals against... Oh dear God, it's Hibs again!
Why won't you die?
Anyway, April's here, the first leg of the Champions League quarterfinal comes along with it. We do get beaten 2-1, but it is kind of hard to score goals when you only have one shot on target. We head to Camp Nou a week later, and we start off the second leg with an encouraging sign as Yu Oikawa evens up the aggregate scoring with a header from the far post. While both teams create chances for the game, nothing goes into the net until the 89th minute, when Barcelona's passing finally finds a hole for our defense, and Memphis Depay scores an absolute howler from outside of the box. The game ends 1-1, Barcelona wins 3-2 on aggregate, and our Champions League hopes and dreams are cut short by a Spanish club for the second year in a row.
Kiss my sweaty balls, you fat f***.
This disappointment leads us right back into the Scottish Cup, where we deal with him swiftly, yet again, in a win that sets up a Scottish Cup final against Rangers. And then, we're back to talking about the Premiership. As we mentioned before, we did well in the Premiership, the split occurs, we're 6 points ahead of Celtic with 5 games to go. To put it bluntly, we win 3 out of the last 5 games, we seal the title with a victory against Hibs, and lift the damn thing itself at Tynecastle Park, while our own rivals are forced to watch the whole thing. Emery Tesco surpasses Barney Battles' goal record in a single season, and then some. And finally, it all leads to our last game of the season against Rangers for the Scottish Cup. Given that we've been able to beat them quite a few times in the regular season, I'm sure that we'll be able to secure the treble here just fine. Flashback to the future! Oh. We're going to penalties.
Of course!
Okay, relax. Nothing to worry about here. As you can see, we clearly have this under control. We've been through these situations twice now over the course of this season and have done just fine. As you can see here, Garnacho missed it. We're up 2-1. Coutinho makes it 3-1. You're gonna be just fine here. See, even if they score, you're still up 1. Brian Reynolds is gonna do just fine.
What a save!
Oh, this isn't good. This isn't good at all. Alright, Shengun, we brought you in.
Oh, wow!
You've got to be kidding me. You have got to be kidding me.
Many unbearable hours later.
There is a good lesson to be learned from all of this. I really just need to learn when to shut the f up. Last season ended on a sour note. Let's start with that. With a year left on my contract as Hearts manager, if I want to achieve my goal of being like Sir Alex Ferguson and winning a Champions League on top of the Scottish Premiership, this is where I have to do it. But our Champions League runs in the past 2 years meant that our young players were getting noticed by the bigger clubs. as our main strikers in Yu Oikawa and Enri Tezgel were attracting interest from elsewhere. While I was able to come to terms on new contracts with youngsters like Jimmy Malloy and Wang Zhi to strengthen our position and bring in a few more youngsters to develop our U18 and B teams, we do end up saying goodbye to the likes of Dujan Sterling, Yasin Salmani, Strahinja Irakovic, and Yutaro Oda. Speaking of Newcastle, they also decided to cause problems on purpose by trying to also get my starting goalie in Nathaniel Nosu over to them with their oil money. And Nosu, in fact, very much wants that move. Problem is, their offer sucked due to water. Nosu has a $60 million release clause on his current contract, and I'm not willing to let him go for anything less than that. He hands a transfer offer, and it's basically a cold war for the remainder of the offseason. Meanwhile, with some of the players that have moved on out of the club, we do need to bring in new blood. So, I do the one thing I've always known how to do.
Jesus wants a hug!
Yes, that's right. A scouting trip to Brazil later, I come back with transfer offers completed for Palmeiras' Danilo and Red Bull Bragantino's Praxedes, who helps strengthen our midfield, and along with it, we get a deal in place for Thompson Gomes Neto from Fluminense, who join us next season once he turns 18. We come back just in time to open up the season with a successful win over Aberdeen, as Yu Oikawa scores the only goal of the match, and keeps us from going back to our reputation as draw merchants on opening games. We follow suit with a 2-1 win over Celtic at their home in Glasgow. Alright, let's keep this moving along then. Thanks to Nosu's antics, I do get a loan from Chelsea for Gabriel Swomina to help us cover in goal, and after a dominant win over Motherwell in the Scottish League Cup, Juventus finally comes around with an offer that meets Nuoso's $60 million release clause, and he finally gets his leave for bigger challenges.
Bye-bye, bitch.
And while Swomina is a decent backup, we need a goalie that has a little bit of swagger in his step. Someone who isn't going to be a swaggerless dork who leaves the moment that some big money clubs come flashing in the cash like I do every single time I need to purchase a new property, as Kazuma Kiryu in the Yakuza 0 Real Estate Royale minigame. My point is, we need a goalie that's got the ability to win games and provide a little bit of housery. It becomes kind of obvious who we should go for here. $20.5 million later, we have Emiliano Martinez as part of the Jambos. We also got Rubens out of Atlético Mineiro in Brazil for $4 million on what's a bargain of a deal for a guy that can start at fullback for us. With the deadline all wrapped up, we proceed to get our Champions League matchups, and while we have some tough games, with our current core of players, we are Now that I've got that out of my system, we use St. Johnston as a warm-up for our newer players and end up with a comfortable victory before hosting Real Betis for our first Champions League game of the season. It's a game in which the Spanish side is in over their heads, as we beat them 4-0 with an Oikawa brace, as he's now the main striker up front and who we will be counting on to score goals for the club. Ross County and Motherwell are the next teams in the Premiership who get trounced as preparation, because I circled a certain Champions League game on my calendar after the little stint they pulled during the transfer window deadline. Liverpool at Anfield. Unfortunately for them, I had the bigger laugh as I watched our team walk into Anfield and win 2-1 against Liverpool to walk away with 3 points, and my former striker not being able to score a single goal on me in the process.
Yo, come on, man. I can't have in this house.
October is a balancing act, and with two of my key players getting injured for a few weeks, the last thing I needed was yet another Scottish head coach of a mid-table team calling me overrated. We beat his team 3-0 and then sweep our way through the rest of the month, including a rather delicious win over Rangers in the Scottish League Cup quarterfinals and beating RB Leipzig 2-0 in the Champions League. Let's ignore the fact that Hibs had their best outing against us yet, forcing us to rescue a 3-3 draw after being down 3-0. If anything, this just proves that they absolutely are the Spurs of Scotland on the fact that they let 3 goals in 15 minutes. Speaking of Spurs, we've got them on the calendar later on in November for the Champions League along with FC Midtjylland, winning the game 3-1 before having back-to-back games against Celtic, both in the Premiership and in the Scottish League Cup semi-final. We beat them back-to-back, punching our ticket into the League Cup final against Aberdeen, and then end the month with a win over recently promoted Dunfermline. But the encounter against Tottenham is still fresh in the minds of Spurs fans after the mere bottle job last season in the round of 16 against us.
2 hours later.
That was a bit anticlimactic.
As per usual, December packs in quite a few games altogether. We start the month off by handling our business against Dundee United, but most importantly, we secure a deal for the January transfer window as we confirm an offer to bring in Christian Eriksen from Manchester United over to us at the start of the upcoming year.
Impressive. Very nice.
The rest of the month sees us roll through St. Johnstone, Rangers, and St. Mirren in the Premiership, where we then somehow, after that, find a way to not lose horribly against Erling Haaland and Manchester City with a 0-0 draw. And then we've got the Scottish League Cup final against Aberdeen. Yu Oikawa and Luis Guilherme score in the second half, and we lift the title for the 5th year straight.
Success!
To their credit, Aberdeen does get a draw out of us in the Premiership later on in the month, but we go undefeated through the rest of it, including wins after the League Cup final against St. Johnstone and Motherwell.
Unit lost.
I just want to know how, man. How?
After renting my way into January off-screen, Christian Eriksen joins us officially along with Graham Harris, and I come back to a bunch of emails. And then find out that Odin Thiago Holm and Yu Oikawa's release clauses got met and now they're leaving the club.
Shit.
Well, we've got some work to do here with the amount of transfer money we now have. So I went to our scouting department and we have quickly made an offer and confirmed the signing of midfielder Shamsuddin Mardin from Club Brugge for $29.5 million, who looks like an absolute stud for his age.
Pause. We need Wolfie in here to add an official pause to that.
Pause.
As we start looking for another striker, we'll be relying on Luis Guilherme and one of our other youngsters, and Giuseppe Poda, to carry the offense, as we hand Hibs their typical early January L, add on to Dunfermline's pains and eventual relegation with Christian Eriksen scoring his first goal as a Jambo, then absolutely dominate Slavia Praha and Ludogorets to punch a top 8 finish and secure a round of 16 spot in the Champions League. It's around this time in which Felipe Coutinho announces his retirement to happen at the end of the season, after we defeated Lothian Thistle in the 4th round of the Scottish Cup, as we then end the month by soundly defeating St. Mirren and heading into the winter transfer deadline with one purpose in mind: a new striker to replace Oikawa, which we're going to need as we're up against Roma in the round of 16 of the Champions League. We actually had begun our pursuit of this particular player a few weeks before deadline, but it is during deadline day that Adam Hlojek signed on the dotted line and joined us on a $59 million transfer deal. That was pretty much our activity. The month of February was off to a great start with 3 straight wins against Dundee United, Motherwell, and Ross County, as Hlojek already has 3 goals to his name in said 3 game. Injuries aside, Patrick Thistle is easily dealt with in the 5th round of the Scottish Cup.
Unit lost.
And I tell the players to just work through my frustrations with the injury gods as stompings of Ross County and St. Johnstone follow suit before we go into Celtic Park and then come out of it with a 3-2 win after a decisive goal from Giuseppe Poda. The start of March sees our 2 legs against Roma, and while we have to rescue a late draw at Stadio Olimpico in Rome and make a come-from-behind effort to win the second leg, we do successfully get ourselves back into the quarterfinals of the Champions League. Speaking of quarterfinals, the Scottish Cup quarterfinal against Aberdeen takes place shortly after that, and thanks to Luis Guilherme, we win it 2-1 and have a semi-final match for it in April against St. Mirren. The Premiership games throughout the month are all victories as we put ourselves in a position to win the league before the Premiership split even takes place at the end of April, which would be a welcome sight considering we're up against Manchester City in the quarterfinals of the Champions League. That Norwegian Cyborg is coming to haunt my nightmares again, isn't he?
Yeah, I like the Terminator.
As we start April, our press officer sends me a nice little article detailing that I'll be coaching my 300th game when we take on Rangers, in a game that sees us with the chance of winning the title so long as we don't lose it. While we only end up with a draw, that is more than enough to seal the point gap, and we have won our 3rd straight Scottish Premiership, securing yet another double. Now that we've got that out of the way, the focus is shifted fully to Man City, who are still chasing after their first Champions League, somehow. The first leg is hosted at Tynecastle Park, and Holland scores within the first 10 minutes. However, Luis Guilherme and Adam Lozek then get us 2 goals halfway through the second half to make it a 2-1 game. And that's when this game goes crazy, because Christian Eriksen scores in the 91st minute to make it 3-1. We then somehow let Jack Grealish score twice, and then to add to the heart attacks, Hwang Chang-hoon gets a goal in the 96th minute to win us the first leg. Oh wow! So after a quick refresh to beat Hibs 1-0, leading up to the Premiership split, we head to the Etihad for the second leg of the quarterfinals. And with goals from Luis Guilherme and Giuseppe Poda, we win 3-1, we advance to the semi-finals once more, and Pep Guardiola adds yet another chapter to his bald fraud reputation. We definitely send a few shockwaves with that aggregate win over Man City in the competition, but it doesn't get any easier as we are set to take on Napoli in the semi-finals. But before we tackle that, we do end up playing another epic matchup as St. Mirren throws everything in the kitchen sink at us during the Scottish Cup semi-final, but we managed to survive it with a 5-4 win to advance to the final yet again, this time against Celtic. In the first leg of the Champions League semi-final, Napoli does get the better of us in the first leg with 2 goals in the second half, but in the second leg at Stadio Diego Armando Maradona, we grit our teeth and go at it full throttle. For 88 minutes, there's chances from both sides, but no scoring of any kind. But in the 89th minute, Jamie Malloy finds a pass to Hwang Chang-hoon in the box, and the Korean super sub soon finds the back of the net to keep our Champions League hopes and dreams alive. We go into the extra time where the scoring opportunities are almost non-existent, but in the dying minutes, it's Dr. Funk himself who steals the ball, crosses it to Luis Guilherme, and he finds the back of the net.
Staggering! Just staggering!
And folks, Heart of Midlothian is going to its first ever Champions League final. So losing one of our key players off the bench who scored 2 key goals in the last 2 rounds is not good. Especially considering the fact that we have Real Madrid in the final.
Off.
We finish our games in the Premiership, and then we're finally on to the last 2 matches of the year. A pair of finals in the Scottish Cup and the Champions League. But first, we've got to deal with Celtic, and we've got to treat this like any other key game we have had throughout this season.
2 hours later.
Goals by Wout Weghorst and Zito late in the game are more than enough to carry the boys to their first Scottish Cup in quite a few years. It's a bitter pill to swallow, as it is our second Scottish Cup final in a row that we've let slip. But it's one in which we're going to have to move on from, because as we have Real Madrid coming up in the fight,
Unit lost.
Surprise, bitch. I bet you thought you'd seen the last of me.
existence is pain. And so is this Champions League final, because while we are able to hold Real Madrid to a single goal, scored by Vinicius Jr. in the 23rd minute. We are unable to break through the Madrid defense. They hold down the fort, the game ends 1-0, and Real Madrid claims their 3rd straight Champions League trophy and 4th over the last 6 years. So, with the end of the season, after putting off signing a new contract for months and months, I know what I have to do.
Many unbearable hours later.
We're running this back at least one more year. The previous season was a shock to many, as we managed to be the first unbeaten team in the Scottish Premiership outside of Rangers and Celtic, along with making a miracle run to the Champions League final that saw us fall to Real Madrid. But after signing a new contract, my first order of business in the off-season was to renegotiate Luis Guilherme's contract. His agent had other ideas, as did I, as I declined an Arsenal offer for him.
It doesn't matter what I say. It doesn't matter what you say, now it's too late.
Wang Zi was the first one to leave, going to Arsenal for $30.5 million. Divine Wrench was making it clear he wanted to leave the club, going as far back as last season, and when Real Madrid offered $39 million, I was okay with letting him go. Eventually, Luis Guilherme left as well, as we accepted an offer from West Ham United for $46 million. This definitely did bolster our transfer budget numbers, so I started looking around to get replacements for the guys who are leaving now and who also left back in January. But rather than solely going with youth, I realized that we were going to need experience as well. So the key two preseason signings we have are Mateus Cunha from Sassuolo and Renato Sanches from Roma. A costly bit of business, but if it meant getting over the hump when it comes to the Champions League, it's a cost I'm willing to pay. We also found a young winger in Tamir Al-Amri in the Iranian league and brought him over for $250k. The board kept their expectations at bay for the Champions League, but they are demanding complete domination within Scotland, which is acceptable. And from our first game of the season, Adam Lozak is out to prove a point about missing the Champions League final by scoring a hat-trick on his return, giving us a 3-0 win over Ross County. August did not have a lot of fixtures, but we did clear through them with flying colours in the two Premiership games we had and the second round of the Scottish League Cup against St Mirren. That led us to the summer transfer window, and there is a certain wonder kid midfielder who was wanting out of his current club in Italy. So after crunching some numbers, we brought in Oscar Gluck on deadline day to be a part of our attacking midfield.
Gas!
It is then that our Champions League matchups are announced, and looking at the lineup, it's kind of a murderer's row of elite team after elite team. It's not easy, but look, we've been consistent with dealing with whatever Europe throws at us for years now. September was going to get busy, but we were staying busy as well, continuing to go unbeaten in the Premiership with wins and draws alike, and advancing in the Scottish League Cup after a 4-0 routing of Ross County. But the two big matchups of the Champions League group stage in this month were our primary focus. Man City was out for blood from last year's quarterfinals, and after another game that was including some last-minute goals chaos, we managed to survive the Etihad and come out with a 2-1 victory. We wouldn't be so lucky against Bayern, as they fought back from what looked to be a game-winning goal by Callum Patterson, with Giovanni Reina scoring at the death for a 2-2 draw. October ends up being our best month yet, with victories across all competitions, including an absolute thrashing in Motherwell with an 8-0 win, Oscar Gluck scoring a hat-trick against NK Osijek, beating Hibernian for the umpteenth time. The downside was, unfortunately, Adam Lozak getting injured for 2 to 3 weeks halfway through the month. November is a bit of a mixed bag, as tough draws against Ajax and Arsenal have us outside of the top 8 in the group stage in the Champions League. Although the month is not all that bad, as we defeat Rangers 3-0 and win comfortably against St Johnstone twice, including a 4-0 win in the Scottish League Cup semi-final. That puts us on the crash course against Celtic in the final. And given what happened last time that there was a trophy on the line against Celtic, I just have one thing to say to that lot. We do manage to catch Borussia Dortmund napping in their own home, beating them soundly 5-0, and it's right around this time in which a very interesting prospect makes his way back from a loan spell. So around this time last season, I found a young Scottish prospect that looked like he had the right stuff as a striker, but needed some playing time. After arranging a loan to MLS's Nashville SC, we shipped him off, and now he's returned in a state that he's ready to play in the Scottish Premiership. So in our next game against Celtic, we brought him off the bench in the second half, and he makes good on his debut with an absolute rocket of a shot to secure a 3-1 victory. It's a good thing he's coming up because Kwon Chang-Hu is going over to RB Salzburg in January. That Celtic game in the Premiership and is one which kicks off a string of clean sheets for us against Livingston, Kilmarnock, Motherwell, and Ross County. But while those games are crucial to keep ourselves in first place, the key game in December for us is the League Cup final against Celtic. Lozek opens up the scoring at the 35th minute, but Giovanni Cabral comes up with the tying goal in the 81st minute after getting a step ahead of our defense. Thankfully, Jaden Jarrett got the memo from the moment that extra time started and certified his place in Hearts lore with a goal in the 91st minute to give us our Scottish League Cup trophy. Having gone undefeated during the entirety of December, we keep that form going at the start of January and even give Lille a similar treatment to what we did with Dortmund in the Champions League. That run of wins promptly comes to an end with a draw against Atalanta, but on the bright side, we are at least making the knockout playoff round of the Champions League. We still keep it moving in the Premiership with wins, and then beat Dundee United 3-0 in the 4th round of the Scottish Cup. As for the winter transfer deadline day, Ian Matson departs for Liverpool for 20 mil.
24 hours later.
That's pretty much it. Huh? Oh yeah, no, we got pretty much everyone we needed. We are good to go for the rest of the season. The February schedule is packed, including our 5th round Scottish Cup matchup against Inverness CT and the knockout playoff matches against Benfica. But thankfully, the injuries don't bring us too much harm as we proceed to win decisively against Inverness in the Scottish Cup and then proceed to wipe the floor against Benfica in both legs of the Champions League. Powered through it by a returning Giuseppe Pada scoring 6 total goals across both legs.
Unit lost.
After Radoslav's injury and a pair of wins against Aberdeen and Dundee United, we get our round of 16 draw in the Champions League, and it's against Liverpool. They set up that 2-leg in early March, and due to scheduling, we've got the first leg of the Champions League match 2 days after a Premiership match against Rangers. So I do the conscious thing of rotating our lineups to keep our starting 11 fresh for the Liverpool game, and Rangers does beat us 1-0 with a Sebastian Wassell goal. They are finally the team that snaps their 89-game unbeaten streak in the Premiership. But I'll gladly sacrifice that streak of games if it means winning against Liverpool. The first leg definitely escalated quickly with both Mohamed Salah and Mateus Cunha getting themselves red-carded before the end of the first half, and with Potter scoring in additional time. But our former main man Emre Tezgel puts one in the net to tie it, and Eduardo Camavinga gets the go-ahead goal as we are beaten 2-1 in our own house.
One week later.
It's time for us to head to Anfield to take on Liverpool for the second leg. After a quiet first half, Shamsuddin Mardin scores the equalizer after an amazing pass from Lozek. The game looks set to go to extra time, but at the death, Caicedo makes a mistake handling the ball, and Lozek finds the back of the net. Victory from the jaws of defeat, and with it, we are headed to the quarterfinals of the Champions League. So we get our proverbial boogeyman of this entire 6-year run that I've had as a head coach. Great. After that announcement, we take Dundee FC to the woodshed in the Scottish Cup as a 4-0 win punches our ticket in the semi-finals against Aberdeen. Wins against Ross County and Motherwell to end the month leads us into April and having yet again another huge point gap before the Premiership split occurs. It's at this point where we start the month against Celtic, and while they rescue a 2-2 draw against us, the result is still enough to crown us Scottish Premiership champions for the 4th year running. Needless to say,
this is my yard now.
But this is the moment of truth because Real Madrid is coming to Tynecastle Park for the first leg, and in the second half, Rubens spreads the needle and finds Mateus Cunha and allows Cunha to finish it off with a volley for the sole goal of the entire match. While it's only a 1-0 win, this means I finally have a victory in the column against Real Madrid, and we go into the Santiago Bernabeu with the advantage. The pressure is now on Madrid to get a result at home.
Several days later.
So after an absolute comedy of errors on the part of everybody on Real Madrid's side, Mateus Cunha opens up the scoring yet again. To their credit, Real Madrid responds within 5 minutes with Endrick finding the back of the net. An Oscar Gluck corner kick finds its way to the far post and onto the head of Enzo Chiafolo. With the game being 2-1, we go on the defensive, and while Endrick yet again finds the back of the net against us, the game itself ends 2-2. We survived our journey to Madrid, and well, we're headed back to the Champions League semi-finals. And this time around, we're getting a rematch from the group stages against Arsenal. It's at this point after dealing with Madrid, where we have the Scottish Cup semi-final in place against Aberdeen, and thanks to Giuseppe Potter's brace, we are on to the Scottish Cup final yet again. And this time, it's a rematch against Rangers from 2 seasons ago. It's at this time where the Premiership splits itself yet again into the Championship and relegation groups, and while there's no unbeaten season to be had, we use these games to rotate the lineups and have our younger players show a bit more of their stuff. Between these Premiership games at the end of April through May, we've got the 2 legs of the semi-final against Arsenal. The first leg at the Emirates ends up being a defensive battle, ending in 0-0, but that is only because of Emiliano Martinez stepping up when we needed him most and saving a crucial penalty kick.
Striker. We need a new striker. Really badly.
The second leg at Tynecastle Park, however, is a much different story. Arsenal does not have any issues finding the back of the net as Merritt Demiral scores in the first 10 minutes of the match, but we proceed to return the favor in the 39th minute with a Radoslav header finding the net. We go into the second half all tied up, but things take a drastic turn as Giuseppe Pada is dribbling towards goal and William Saliba fouls him in the box, with VAR making the call to give it as a penalty kick. Rubens steps up to take it, and he buries it in. As Arsenal then go on the attack to get a goal back, a counter-attack eventually leads to Adam Lozek finding Giuseppe Pada with a cross for our third goal, and in front of a sold-out Tynecastle Park, we book our ticket to Greece as Heart of Midlothian will once again play in the Champions League final.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. So why don't you show me what you plan to do about them?
Good God, this team is stacked. Well, we'll deal with them in due time. We've got the Scottish Cup final now, and I want revenge, and I'm sure the boys are going to start so well that it's not going to... How are we 2-0 down in the first 15 minutes? Thankfully, Oscar Gluck gets to go back at the 19th minute mark, and we settle down for the rest of the half. We trail by 1 going into the second half, but it is Gluck once again stepping up as he ties it in the 53rd minute with a counter-attack off of a Rangers set piece. At this point, we're pushing the tempo and attacking further, and finally a breakthrough goal happens in the 70th minute as Giuseppe Pada's strike inside of the box gives us a 3-2 lead. Only for that lead to evaporate in smoke within less than 5 minutes. With memories of what happened 2 seasons ago, we make a quick shift in formation going to a 4-3-3, and eventually we catch Rangers on the counter yet again with none other than Christian Eriksen finding Oscar Gluck. After 3 long years, the Scottish Cup is once again ours. The treble has been accomplished for our second time here, but we've still got one more competition left, and it's the most important one. The Champions League final against Napoli is here. They clearly show from the opening that they're not messing around as Kim Min-jae's header finds the back of the net at the 6th minute off of a set piece. Not an ideal start, but that seems to wake the team up as we proceed to go on the offense, getting a majority of the shots, even with Napoli retaining a majority of the possession. Much like in the second leg of last year's semifinal, they are looking to ride this one out with the 1-0 result, and that doesn't get any better when Mateus Cunha goes down with an injury at the 49th minute.
Not again. Yeah, no, this is a serious injury, lads. We need to get this guy on the buggy.
Honestly, it's not looking good. We go from the 4-2-3-1 we started with our familiar 4-3-1-2 to push for a goal in the last 20 minutes. And while Napoli is pushing for a second goal of their own, it's their own folly that is their undoing as Victor Osimhen attempts to murder Danilo in cold blood.
Get him off the field! That was diabolical!
And eventually, almost as if it's a repeat of last year, the 89th minute sees Hubens getting across into the box, the ball bouncing off of Jaden Jarrett, and Adam Loza capitalizing on it, tying the game up 1-1.
A few minutes later.
The man who missed the Champions League final last season, making the difference in this year's edition and giving us a chance to survive.
This is trouble!
Oh, for sakes. So we go to extra time. There is no winner to be found there. And yes, this means we're going to decide the Champions League in penalty kicks. But within these, as Christian Eriksen, Frank Rob, and Oscar Gluck open up the scoring, I remember that we have something that Napoli does not. Emiliano Martinez. A huge save by Emi Martinez gives us the huge advantage here, as Loza converts it to make it 3-1. Malik Sarr keeps Napoli within 1, then Renato Sanchez converts to make it 4-2. It's on Lobotka to step up to take this next one. Emiliano Martinez with the save, and oh my god, we've done it. We have won the Champions League in the most heart attack inducing way humanly possible. At long last, a team in Scotland outside of the old firm and Sir Alex Ferguson's Aberdeen to achieve continental glory. And after last year's heartbreak, it's triumph and jubilation through just sheer dumb luck in the streets of Edinburgh as we celebrate an unlikely quadruple trophy campaign. What we set out to do in Scottish football to break Old Firm's dominance has been achieved. But now, the bigger task remains. Maintaining the status as the best in Scotland, and most importantly, the best in Europe. But that's another story for another time entirely.